Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for being with us. I've got three events that I'm going to brief you on this afternoon. And the first one is a gentleman that I'll call Doroteo Martinez Castro. He's 43 years of age. He is here illegally in this country. That's right. About 2019, he was arrested by the Haines City Police Department on traffic-related charges, and subsequent to that, ICE deported him to Mexico. He came back to this country illegally, and ICE caught him here and deported him for a second time. And then he came back to this country again. So he's 3 times he's illegally entered this country, and 2 times he was deported. So on Saturday of April the 22nd at about 10:55, almost 11 p.m. at night, he was the at-fault driver in a vehicle crash at 1792 and Lee Jackson Highway, which is in the unincorporated area of Haines City. In fact, he hit a car head-on, and he killed the person in the other car. Did you hear what I said? He's here illegally. ICE has deported him twice. He's back. We don't know whether or not he's intoxicated or not because we sent the drugs and the alcohol off to be checked. We suspect that he is. And guess what? He killed somebody. Had he not been in this country, that other person would be alive. He was also transported to the hospital, as well as the person who ultimately died at the hospital, our victim in the other vehicle. After he was released from the hospital in Haines City, where they did a lot of tests on him to include CAT scans because it was a significant crash, he was found to have a broken ankle. So they put a temporary cast on his broken ankle, and he was released to the custody of our traffic homicide detectives, who charged him with DUI manslaughter and DWLSR causing death. We're still waiting on all the toxins to come back, but we had the initial indicators to charge him with that. So now he's killed someone, and he shouldn't have been in this country. On Monday, April the 24th, at about 10:40 in the morning, he was, by the way, located in our medical dorm at the South County Jail because of his broken foot. When our deputies noticed that he all of a sudden became unresponsive as he was sitting in a wheelchair that he was in because of his broken foot. We immediately started CPR. He was transported to Sebring Hospital, and despite the best efforts of our medical personnel and our detention deputies, he too died. Well, obviously there's no negative interaction with us. He's not told any of our detention deputies that there's a problem. They've observed him from when he was booked in the day before. They've seen him get from his bed into his wheelchair, go to the restroom, everything's fine, and now he's deceased. This morning we had an initial autopsy performed. Now understand, the autopsy won't be completed for several months. That we have to send, once again, the toxins off. But the initial result of the autopsy indicated that he had an internal injury from the vehicle crash. And ultimately, they believe that's what, once again, caused his death. There was no fight, no scuffle at the jail. He didn't fall off of a bed. He simply died as a result of his injuries from his crash, at least according to the initial autopsy results. Once again, we'll have the other results later. But he managed to kill himself and someone else. And had he been in Mexico, where he should have been, he would have been alive and well, as was the person that was killed. Be that as it may, the case is currently still under investigation. As you know, we released this information to you quickly, and details are subject to modification. However, we anticipate that it will be, like we said, with the addition of what all drugs and alcohol is in his system at the time of the crash, and if there were any foreign substances left over residual whenever he was taken to the hospital after the crash. Well, that was the one single event. Now I want to introduce you to Maximino Lopez Gonzalez. He's 58 years of age. Guess what? Newsflash. He's here illegally in this country. That's right. He had a work visa back years ago. He overstayed his work visa and never went back. So he's not supposed to be in the country either. So on April the 24th, during the late evening hours, we're called to Memphis Road, which is on the west side of Lakeland, to a disturbance family. When we get there, we find a bedridden relative who's the victim of the domestic violence. That's right. This victim is bedridden and 65 years of age. So what does Maximino do? He throws chemical cleaning agent on her and threatened to kill her. Of course, they called emergency services. Our deputies arrive and we arrest him for felony battery. During the investigation, we find out he's also, newsflash, has methamphetamine. We see a meth pipe. So we take him into custody. And at the time we tell him he's under arrest and we handcuff him, the fight is on. So he fights with us. He resists getting in the car. Multiple deputies finally get him inside the patrol car. When we get him in the patrol car, we get him seat belted in. Because he's still fighting with us, we put what we call a rip hobble around his ankles in order to stop him from kicking. And he's handcuffed behind his back. We start transporting him to the county jail. As we're on the way to the county jail, somehow he pulls his right hand out of the handcuff. And he begins to beat on the inside of the patrol car. He begins to beat his head against the patrol car. He's flailing around with a handcuff. And the deputy calls for assistance so that they can try to once again control him. They pull off to the side of the road on the parkway in the area of US Highway 98. And 3 or 4 deputies arrive, and immediately when they start assessing, well, how are we going to get this guy out? He's got a loose handcuff and he's fighting and he's just out of control. They notice that he's now sweating profusely. Now, why is he sweating profusely? Is it because of his agitated state? Is it because of excited delirium? So they call for EMS. They start to get him out of the back seat of the car, and he immediately punches one of our deputies in the face. So they back out of the car, and then they decide, well, they can't get him can't get the seatbelt undone because he's fighting them so violently. So they go around to the other side of the car, and one of the deputies takes his knife and cuts the seatbelt loose in order to get him out of the car. So they're then able to get him out of the car. They're wrestling with him. He is totally out of control. He has now injured the second one during the process of getting him out of the car. He has bitten one of our deputies, who is treated and released at the hospital from that bite. He also kicks another one of our deputies in the groin. It's just a total fight that's on. EMS arrives, so they put him on the stretcher, and at the direction of how EMS wanted him handcuffed, he was handcuffed, and we're taking him now to the hospital. We believe he's suffering from excited delirium, from his use of drugs and or alcohol or whatever is in his system. He's very difficult to handle. As EMS is running emergency to the hospital, being followed by Our deputies, EMS radios back to our station, said, hey, he's coded on the paramedic, and they're working a code on him now. When they arrived at the hospital, they continued to work the code. However, he passed from his apparent, and I underscore apparent, excited delirium. We also found another baggie of meth in the back seat of the car where we had been wrestling with him. As is the protocol, and our deputy confirmed, every time I arrest somebody, I search the vehicle to make sure that there's no illegal narcotics left behind. So once again, we've got a guy on methamphetamine that's in the country illegally, that throws chemical cleaning agent on a 65-year-old lady who is bedridden. He's arrested. He fights us at the scene. Then he attempts he gets out of the handcuff and is beating on the windows and trying to get out of the vehicle. We bring him out. We see that, hey, he's now got the appearance of excited delirium. EMS leaves with him in the ambulance, and they're treating him, and on the way to the hospital, he codes on the ambulance folks. So we have our detectives with the officer involved death investigation team working the investigation. The preliminary results are here from the medical examiner as of this morning. He has significant medical maladies. He's got a bad liver, he's got an enlarged heart, he's got a lot of medical issues going on. There is absolutely no indication at the early stage of the autopsy that there was any injury at all from the resisting our deputies that caused his death. We are leaning toward, the medical examiner is leaning toward, once again, a death by excited delirium. We won't know that for several months until the toxicology comes back and it's ruled officially by the medical examiner. But it appears at this time that's what occurred. Now, of course, there's many exit ramps here where none of this had to occur, starting with the fact he didn't have to throw chemical cleaning agent on his relative who was bedridden, coupled with the fact that if he'd have been in his home country as opposed to the United States, certainly this wouldn't have been a problem. If he hadn't have gone into this excited delirium fit, and fought with our deputies on two different occasions, then he would not have apparently over-exercised his body, and subsequent to that, apparently passed from excited delirium. For those that are not responsible or not familiar with that, usually it's the result of using drugs or the after effects of using drugs, and what happens is your body goes into overdrive. The way I would suggest it is it's like having a car engine and you pressing the gas pedal to the floorboard on a car engine and running that engine wide open, tacking it wide open, and finally it comes apart. Well, that's what excited delirium does to the human body. It races that human body to the point that the human body comes apart. He already had medical issues, and certainly that appears to be the way that was. But now I want to relate to you an event that was very, very sad to me. This is our third event of the day. This all started on Sunday, March the 26th at about 2:07 in the afternoon. We received a 911 call, and our initial response was, hey, this kid was riding a dirt bike in the Gordon Heights area when he apparently had a crash, and we need an ambulance and we need deputies. Our deputies arrived, as did EMS. We found that he had apparent significant injuries. They rushed him to the Bartow Hospital, where he died at the hospital. As the investigation at the hospital is ongoing, the hospital staff calls us back because we're still at the scene thinking we're working a vehicle crash, and says, hey, there's a bullet hole in this person. That's right, Ben Mason, who's 34 years of age. Ben's a black male and our victim, and we use his name because his family said we could, was the ultimate victim in the wrong place at the wrong time and ran into some exceptionally evil people. So here's what happened. Ben had been in an argument with his girlfriend earlier in the morning, and she dropped him off at the Walmart in Bartow. So Ben calls his uncle, who lives in Gordon Heights, and his uncle picks him up and takes him to his house in Gordon Heights. There at the house is a dirt bike, an orange and white dirt bike. So he asks, can I go ride the dirt bike? And the family says, sure, it's all right with us. So he's out riding the dirt bike in Gordon Heights when these two people are in the neighborhood, Wesley Andino and Adriana DeValle. Okay, Wesley is 28, Adriana is 26. She is Wesley's girlfriend. And neither of them have a criminal history to speak of. Adriana, back in the day, was charged with a DV, domestic violence, that was dropped, and he at one time was charged with a grand theft where he held some property of someone he worked with until the guy paid him off, so that was dropped. So these people don't have any warrants. But here's, as it's described to us, Adriana goes on Facebook Marketplace, and she and Wesley see this dirt bike, this orange and white dirt bike. And Adriana decides she'll buy it for Wesley. Now, this is according to what Adriana's telling us. So she puts $100 down and does via a cash app. And I'm not going to give their names because they're juveniles, but the kids are 15 and 19 years of age. I want to underscore here, the kids are not ripping anyone off. They're legitimately going to sell this white and orange dirt bike. So Adriana says, hey, I can't get over there until this weekend. They said, $100, we'll hold it. She cash apps them $100. The next day, according to her, she tells us, she calls the people back. They've talked on the cell phone as well as through social media, and says, I'd like my $100 back because I found out that my boyfriend was cheating on me and I'm no longer interested in buying him a dirt bike. And they go, no, that's not the way that worked. We've already spent part of your $100. You agreed to it, so you can come get your dirt bike if you want to. You owe us $800 more. So she kept calling them several times during the day, so they blocked her. Well, she knew the street and the area in Gordon Heights to go to. So now we're at Sunday afternoon, and they decide they'll go see if they can find this person that they sent the $100 to and get their $100 back. She still doesn't want the dirt bike. Well, as they're riding around the neighborhood looking for the address, they see our victim, Ben, riding the white and orange dirt bike. So they think, well, he must be the guy who was selling the bike. So they tried to stop him. He rode around and he came back and they said, hey, we don't want to buy your dirt bike anymore. We want our $100. Well, Ben doesn't know them, doesn't know what they're talking about, and he drives off. When he drives off, old Grits for Brains here jumps out and shoots one time at him. And then they jump in the car and take off. Well, Grits for Brains is now driving. Adriana, who she said leaned down in the seat and didn't see anything, isn't that convenient, took off and went back to their home in Chestnut Woods off Chestnut Road in West Lakeland. Have I told you lately that my homicide detectives are simply the absolute very best. Well, they were able to find out where Wesley and Adriana were living on Chestnut Woods. So they tracked them there only to find they've moved out. That's right. So what has occurred, Adriana says, hey, I want to go back to Delaware to my mama's. I'm over this. You've scared me. Wesley, when he got home, said, I shot at that guy. I don't know if I hit him or not. Adriana says he said that, but she didn't know. So 2 days later, they leave for Delaware. Well, let me remind you once again, my homicide team is simply the very best. Well, they tracked him all the way to St. Augustine. The St. Augustine Sheriff's Office was remarkable. They helped us out immediately. They found some video, where they gassed up in St. Augustine, and off they went again. We tracked them to Delaware. We contacted the U.S. Marshals and the Delaware State Police, and they were outstanding. They found and arrested both Adriana and Wesley on warrants that we had obtained. They have just been returned to Polk County, where Wesley has been indicted by the grand jury for first-degree murder and Adriana for accessory to a capital felony. Now, I want you to think about this. Poor old Ben is simply riding a dirt bike that he was given permission to ride. He doesn't know anything about anything. He doesn't know these people. He didn't know the dirt bike was for sale. He's just minding his own business. And Grits for Brains here shoots him. Did you hear what I said? Shoots this guy who's minding his own business. If there's ever been a classic case for the opportunity to spend the rest of your life in prison, this is it. Because this guy was way out of line, and it all started with Adriana trying to buy him this dirt bike, and then Adriana finding out that he was not the nice, wonderful person that she thought. However, he did take her to Delaware, so maybe part of that story is suspect, but that's up to the prosecutors to work it out later. Do you have any questions? You know what I know. We'll give you another update just as soon as we have them. Take care. See you later.